many times have you heard a friend tell you, are you sure you're pushing hard enough? Or even worse, are you believing it yourself that you should actually be pushing harder and that that's the reason why you're not progressing? Well, if that's the case, then this video is for you. Hint, your friends are wrong. My name is Caroline. I am a 1813 5K finisher, and I'm here to tell you that pushing harder, that just left me injured for 4 years. And what you really want to be doing is training smarter. In this video, we're going to talk about your starting point, how to stress your body in the right way, and trusting the process. Your starting point. So let me guess, you have a goal of wanting to run faster, whether that be in the 5K, 10K, half marathon, or full marathon. And the first thing you need to do is to accept where you're currently at. We've all been there. We look at the people who have what we don't have, we're inspired, and we think, oh, what do I have to do to get to that point? But then we don't realize that we might be actually quite far away from that point. And the sooner you can accept where you're currently at and learn to work with your body based off that starting point, the easier your progression is going to be. And this is because, especially with running, if you're stressing your body too much based on where it's currently at, you're going to end up getting injured. And this is when voices from our parents or friends, people who care and love us, are not necessarily helpful because they don't necessarily know our starting point. So for example, if that friend is telling you that you need to push yourself harder, that friend probably doesn't even know anything about heart rate training, about your max heart rate, and what your heart rate should be during a race to really get out your maximal potential. Next, you need to stress your body in the right way. And this is why having a plan for how to go about this process is really beneficial. If you ask me how to stress your body in the right way, I'm going to tell you to train on heart rate and train on time on feet. And that is because heart rate training is a direct measurement of effort and it's very personalized to you. So part of the problem with training on pace, for example, is that pace doesn't take into consideration heat, elevation, dehydration, all these different factors, versus heart rate does. Heart rate is also just a very good individualized approach because you can take a lactate test or a VO2 max test. And if you watch any of my other videos, you know that I'm always talking about this. And that is because in order for us to work with data, we really want to make sure that the data is as accurate as absolutely possible and that it is as accurate to you. Meaning that since heart rate is very individualized, one person can have a naturally higher heart rate, another person can have a lower heart rate. We want to get that VO2 max test to figure out, okay, what is actually your max heart rate? And then use that to calculate your zones or get a lactate test where we get those zones. And then we want to craft a training plan that is specifically for you and also then based on how much running you are doing per week, because your training is going to look different from someone who is running a lot less or a lot more. Another important point that I want to address is the importance of periodization, because this is something that I see is neglected a lot in non-elites training programs versus elites practices a lot. And periodization just means having some super easy days and some harder days, but it's more than that. It means having some harder weeks and some easier weeks. And this is something that I myself do a lot of, and I also do this with my athletes, and we've seen how incredible benefits we've gotten from it, because it just makes sure that we are absorbing those runs by having those easier weeks every now and then. Trust the process. This is probably the hardest thing about training the way I'm preaching, which is on heart rate and on time, because more than likely you're going to be running a lot slower than you're used to. And it's really hard to not go there that that is holding you back from achieving your goals. And trust me when I say that I've been there, my athletes have been there. And the only thing I can tell you is that the hardest part is going to be at the very beginning when you commit to training this way. Because as you commit and you stay true to those heart rate max targets and you see that it's working, it's going to be so much easier to follow through on the plan. So stay patient and eventually you're going to get there and you're going to feel so incredibly good and wonder why it took you so long before you started training that way. And another thing I want to add is that my heart rate for my entire half marathon, I just ran the Copenhagen half marathon running 125 and my average heart rate was 182, which is high, right? And yet I was training so much at 120 heart rate. So that goes to show that even though you train at such a low heart rate, that doesn't mean that you can't push at a higher heart rate come race day. And that's such a common question that people ask me, like, but how are you going to be able to push on race day if you're training so low? And to that, I want to say that I'm not just training at that lower heart rate. I do a lot of threshold runs. And in fact, one of the reasons why I train on such a low heart rate is to be able to do more runs at threshold. What are you going to do next? Well, it's not going to be to push harder. Instead, you are going to buy a smartwatch, you're going to buy an HRV belt, and you're going to commit to training on heart rate, and you are going to trust the process, trust me, and then you're going to start crushing your goals and you're going to feel 1,000 times better. And you're going to wonder, why didn't I do this earlier? And if you want to learn how to execute a threshold run, then check out this video where I take you through my entire threshold run.